Hi everyone, I'm Staci, a compulsive eater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the gray sheet. I write those meals down. I commit them to my sponsor. I don't eat in between my meals no matter what. I eat what I commit no matter what, and abstinence is most important in my life today without exception. My abstinence date is July 1st, 2017. I'm zooming in from Los Angeles, California. I wanted to thank everyone doing service at this meeting. And Carla, thank you for asking me to qualify. So what it used to be like, I grew up in a loving home in Southern California. It was my mother, my father, and my younger brother. And what was unique, I think, is that I had anaphylaxis to many, many foods. So my first anaphylactic shock that I experienced was I was 2 years old. And so ever since I could learn how to read, I would read ingredients in foods. I would take my special foods places, and I always felt different than other people because of that. Also, I grew up in a home with a mom who is a compulsive eater, and she was on every diet under the sun. And also she, the outward manifestation was very important to her. So how she presented to the world. And I was watching her with her weight challenges up and down 50 pounds constantly. And I also had a lot of anxiety as a child and as a teenager and as an adult, I guess. But I had a lot of anxiety and panic. So that was kind of how my childhood went. When I was in middle school was the first time that I figured out that I was very different than other people when it came to food. I would get these insatiable cravings for foods that we don't eat. And I would tell my father that I needed him to get me something. This is before I could drive. It was usually the thing that you would bake in the oven, like you'd make 30 of them, and I would eat it raw with a diet soda. And he could tell by the look in my eyes that I just needed to have it. And that's how I felt, like I would die if I didn't have it. And when I was in high school, I was a normal weight until college. So when I was in high school, I was very active. I had the outward manifestation, though, with my actions was so different than other people that I read about 10 years ago in my high school yearbook, someone said, I can't remember when Staci wasn't eating or talking about food. Like that's how obvious it was. And I was able to go off campus for lunch in my junior and senior year, and I would go with a group of friends and we would go to a fast food place, and I would have 2 main things, 3 side things, at least 2 desserts, a drink we don't drink, and a diet soda. And I would do this every day because I felt like I had to do it. Also, the first time that I totaled a car because of food, it's been 3 cars, but the first time I totaled a car because of food, I was a junior in high school. I had a bunch of girls in my car. There were at least 5 of us. And I reached down to the passenger seat on the floor to get something that we don't eat. And I hit a car that hit a car. And I was always, it was the needing it. Like I'd have the constant food thoughts and I needed to have it. And so we would bake. I was a cheerleader at the time, and we would bake things for the different sports teams. And I would first offer someone like $5 for it, and then $10, $15, $20, just to get one, and not like, one was never enough. So that was how high school was. Then I went to college. I went across country. I didn't have my mom there watching things. I had a car. I could go and do what I wanted to do. I thought I would experience a lot of freedom, and instead I was imprisoned by the food. So I stopped exercise. I wasn't dancing anymore. And so college started my severe binging and restricting, and I went up and down about 25 to 30 pounds in a very quick manner of time constantly. And I would make these deals with my friends there. I would say, you know, I'll go with you to the fraternity party that you want to go to, but then you need to come with me to 7-Eleven. And this would be like at midnight. I'd bring my own spoon. I would sit down on the floor and I would just eat gallons of the 1 gallon at a time of the cold stuff. And I have a list of the things that I did to try to control and enjoy my eating over the years. Severe restricting, I did slim fast, I would chew food and spit it out. I would over-exercise, I would overuse laxatives. I'm a lifetime member of Weight Watchers. I was very successful in Weight Watchers. It worked until it didn't, but it didn't work to get the constant food thoughts and cravings gone. I just lost the weight. South Beach, Dexatrim, phentermine, hypnosis. And when I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 32, which they think I pretty much had all along, so I always had that constant, you know, sugar floating around in my system, I'd shoot myself up with my diabetes medicine so I could binge, all the while being married to someone who at the time was the president of the American Diabetes Association for Los Angeles. And of course, he didn't know I was doing that. Ate out of the trash. In law school, so up and down with the weight, but this is just an example of how I let food just rule me. Graduated high school and studied for the bar exam. So it was 2.5 months of studying for this exam, 10 hours a day. And when I got to the hotel for the bar exam, it was a 3-day exam. My best friend, who knew nothing about my compulsive eating, had delivered to the hotel a big parachute, like with a basket full of all my favorite foods, my sweet foods. So during the bar exam, we were allowed just a plastic, you know, Ziploc bag where we could bring things in. It was full of the stuff that we don't eat. And I ate nonstop during the bar exam for 8 hours, you know, at a time, eating the stuff we don't eat because it soothed me. Well, it also made me fuzzy in the head. And I ended up passing the first time, and I don't know why or how, but between the time I took the exam and 5 months later, when I got my bar results, I had gained the 30 pounds because I had no control over anything during that time except my eating. And so I gained that weight. And okay, so I also had a job at this big firm, and I would go from secretarial bay to secretarial bay to say, oh, you know, my assistant didn't bring breakfast today for our team of lawyers. And so I'd like to, you know, I need to eat your breakfast. And I go in my office and I would binge on that. And then I would fall asleep. And then I would wake up and I'd go to the next secretarial bay and do the same thing. All the while I'm, you know, billing, and I've made amends for that. What happened to change me? So in 2007, I finally said to the therapist I'd been seeing for 10 years, you know what? I think I have a problem with food. And I explained to him what I was doing with food. And he said that he was in OA. And he said, excellent program, works for him. I suggest that you start in this other food fellowship. It's Compulsive Eaters Anonymous HOW concept. And a year later, of course, because I had to do a lot of research, I started in that program. And I was in that program for a little over a decade with mostly abstinent. I did have some slips in there, but it'd be 3 years, slip for a week, 2 years, slip for, you know, a couple days. And that's because my disease is progressive. And so when I would slip, my diabetes would be so bad that I couldn't, I just physically couldn't handle it. And there was a loophole that I found, which was with the artificial sweeteners. So I was having hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of packets of sweeteners directly into my mouth at a time and calling myself abstinent. And I don't think that's what they really intended, but it was abstinent. not abstinent behavior, but that's what I did. And that's part of my story. About 2 years before I came into Gray Sheet, July 1st, 2017, the food thoughts came back with a vengeance. I was going out to eat probably about, oh, thank you, Phyllis. Is that 10 minutes past? Okay. I had been going out to eat. I would go out to eat at least once a day to get because you didn't have to weigh and measure in a restaurant. I would get the grains that we don't eat here, and I would eat a huge volume of them and constant food thoughts, gain some weight, but I just knew intuitively that I needed something different, that wasn't my path anymore. I needed something different. And I was watching a friend of mine who used to be in CEA How with me do Gray Sheet. And she just had that Gray Sheet glow and just this serenity about her. And I would watch her weigh and measure. We would be out. It would be under all conditions. And she seemed to have so much more control, if you want to call it that, over the food than I did. And she seemed to be present all the rest of the time. You know, she was just present. So I asked her to take me to my first meeting, and that was July 1st, 2017 at the Grove in Los Angeles. And I was very honest. I said, you know, you all don't have to invest very much in me because I'm doing this for 90 days. I don't know how I'm going to do 3 weight and measure meals a day because on my other food plan, I could have a medical abstinence and I'm a diabetic. And so I need to eat 6 times a day. And that's even harder to eat 6 times a day because you're facing your demons 6 times a day. Okay, not true. And I'm terminally unique because of course I am, because I'm an addict. And they said, oh, you can for sure eat 6 times a day. You'll just have to find another program because in this program we eat 3 times a day. And I said, okay. So I made a decision that I was going to be entirely honest with my sponsor insofar as what I was doing with my food, and that I was going to be a newcomer. And on the 90th day, it happened to be a Saturday. So I was at the Grove again, and I shared and I said that there's no place I would rather be in the world than in this chair right now, because my life had changed around completely. I was present for my family again. The food thoughts were gone. I didn't have the detox really from the type of detox that I had in the beginning of the last food fellowship, because it had been 6+ years or so since I had had the sugar and flour in my system. But there were so many changes. There were so many changes. And so that's what it was like. And that's what happened to change me. And what it's like now, I love this saying, I wrote it down. It's too late to start weaving the net when you're already falling, and that I can't rely on yesterday's recovery for today's abstinence. So I do certain things every day as if it's a new day. First of all, I weigh and measure my 3 committed meals, and I am 100% honest when it comes to my food. I don't know what I've been honest about in the last 3 years, 5 months or so. I can't even really tell you, but I know when it comes to my food that I have been 100% honest. I sponsor and I'm sponsored, which is both are such a gift. I do at least 1 Zoom meeting a day. And I can tell you, since the last time I qualified, which I think was in July, I have cut back on my Zoom meetings. So now it's really about 1 Zoom meeting a day, sometimes 2. Thank you, Phyllis. Is that, that's 5 minutes left?
Are we 20 or 15?
We're 20.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness, you still have 6. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So I now do a more reasonable amount of meetings for me, which is the 1 sometimes plus meetings a day. And I have a full life. I have a very full life. But for me, it's just that thing, like I can't rely on yesterday's recovery, and I don't want to stop making, doing something that makes me feel good. And attending meetings and connecting with my fellows makes me feel really good. I do service. I started doing service by making outreach calls a lot when I was new, a lot of outreach calls. And that really, I think service for me, it strengthens that like abstinent muscle, like that picking up the phone. So if there's a food emergency, I was used to making the phone calls and still am. Doing service at meetings and on the, at the intergroup level and the world service level, I get to connect with so many people that when there's a food emergency, if I can't reach my sponsor, I pick up the phone and call someone, and it's like I'm calling my best friend. Like it just doesn't, it's not hard to pick up the phone. And retreats, I loved retreats and roundups, and we'll get back there again. Just I haven't, we're not doing them in person right now. At least I haven't been able to, but that was just to see another GreySheeter. I'm really lucky because I live by some GreySheeters that I can just really connect with in person, like have a socially distanced lunch or whatever it is. But I really miss seeing my fellow GreySheeters from all over. I've worked the steps quite a few times in GreySheet, which has been a big difference for me than working it in the other food fellowship. The reason why is that I have the clarity that I didn't have when I was eating the grains that we don't eat in this program. And with that clarity, I could really, I have more of a connection with my higher power. And through the prayer and meditation, that's just so important to me. And I've worked the steps in an AWOL back to basics, but I try to work the steps every day. That's just a design for living. And I can't imagine what people do when they don't have that tool. And I love this saying, if someone were to look at my life today from the outside, if they looked in, would they know that I'm abstinent? And I try to use that as like a measuring stick. And I think that people really would. This is a no matter what program for me. I do this without exceptions and without exception. And I have had what I consider to be a lot of no matter what's in the last 3+ years. So I made a list because it's easier for me. So I'll just run down the list. I had a major surgery with a hospitalization, and that put me into surgical menopause and started hormone replacement therapy. And like, that was interesting. My parents divorced after 47 years of marriage. I stood up for my mom at her wedding. She got remarried. My dad was diagnosed with cancer. I've traveled internationally, and that was easy to do with the help of my fellows. My daughter graduated high school, went off to college, and in 2019 in March, my grandmother passed away at 102. Then my dad passed away in July at 73. And then my sister-in-law dropped dead at 51 of a brain aneurysm. And my dad and my sister-in-law were 8 days apart. So that was very challenging. But here's and now I get to add COVID to my list, yay. And the everyday, no matter what's, like when the microwave, breaks. What I've learned in this program, first of all, I've learned to navigate the no matter what's through my fellows, because I've seen people go through things. I know that there's nothing that I can go through that someone has not been through abstinently. I know for me, there's nothing that food will make better. In fact, food is my anchor. It's what I have to anchor me to this world 3 times a day. That's the only thing that's consistent in my life. The 3 times a day that I eat a weighed and measured meal. And I just want to end by saying I have such gratitude. I can't even express to you the gratitude that I have for my fellows in this program. I think that just says it all. So I'm going to go ahead and pass, and I don't know no matter what.